The music was playing, flowers lined the aisle, and my bride was walking toward me with the brightest smile I had ever seen. But before she could take another step, Karen stormed in like she owned the place. Dressed in her usual bold outfit, hands on her hips, she pointed at everyone and shouted, "This wedding is not authorized. I'm shutting it down." Gasps spread through the crowd. Guests froze, unsure of what to do, while my bride's eyes filled with shock and anger. Karen, the self-proclaimed enforcer of our neighborhood, thought she had the power to stop us. But what she didn't know was that she was messing with the wrong groom. I wasn't just any man getting married. That Dyer was the one who issued permits for the county. And if she wanted a fight, she was about to learn the meaning of humiliation. The first light of morning spilled across the lake, scattering gold across the water. It was the kind of morning people pray for when they schedule an outdoor wedding, calm, warm, and painted in soft colors that made the whole world feel like a blessing. The pavilion by the lake had been decorated the night before. White ribbons, draped from the wooden beams, chairs lined up in perfect rows on the grass, and delicate bouquets of lilies rested at the ends of each aisle. Even before guests began to arrive, the air buzzed with anticipation. It wasn't just any wedding, it was my wedding. I stood by the pavilion, adjusting my tie for the third time, trying to calm the nervous energy rushing through me. "My best man," Jake slapped me on the shoulder with a grin. "Relax, man. You look like you're about to face a firing squad instead of marrying the woman of your dreams." His joke earned a laugh, though my stomach still twisted with nerves. I wasn't nervous about Emma, never her. She was the one steady thing in my life, the one person who had been with me through the storms. I was nervous because I knew, deep down, that today wasn't just about vows and rings. It was about standing firm against someone who had made our lives a headache from the very start. Karen. Her name alone made people roll their eyes in our community. She had self-appointed herself as the guardian of the neighborhood, patrolling sidewalks with a clipboard, scolding children for chalk drawings, and filing complaints about everything from lawn decorations to parking. If there was joy, Karen wanted to stamp it out. And when Emma and I reserved the lakeside pavilion for our wedding, it was like waving a red flag in front of her. From the very beginning, she tried to stop us. 2 weeks before the big day, she marched up to me while I was mowing my lawn. Her voice carried that shrill, cutting tone she always used when she thought she had authority. "You can't use the pavilion for your wedding. It's meant for community events only. Private parties aren't allowed." I shut off the mower and pulled out the folded permit I always kept in my pocket. "Actually, Karen, this is the official event license signed and stamped by the county. I know it's valid because..." I paused, holding back a smirk. "I'm the one who signed it." Her face tightened with anger, lips pressed into a thin line. She had nothing to say. Karen never did when the law wasn't on her side, but that never stopped her from trying again. And I knew she wasn't done. Back in the present, as the first guests began arriving, I caught myself glancing down the path toward the parking lot. Each time a car door closed, I half expected to see her striding up in her usual bold colors and smug expression. But for now, there was no sign of her. Just family and friends, smiling, hugging, and taking their seats. Emma's cousins chased each other around the chairs, her aunt fussed with the flowers, and my mother dabbed at her eyes even before the ceremony began. The happiness was contagious, settling my nerves bit by bit. Then Emma appeared, even though it was just a quick glimpse. Before the ceremony, she took my breath away. She wore a flowing white dress with lace that seemed to shimmer in the sunlight, her dark hair pinned back with delicate flowers. Her smile lit up everything around her. She waved at me from across the lawn, and I waved back, every ounce of nervousness vanishing in that instant. This was the woman I had waited my whole life for. And nothing, no person, no obstacle was going to ruin the day we had built together. Or so I thought. It happened just as the music began, the soft notes of the piano filling the air and signaling the start of the procession. Guests stood, turning toward the aisle as Emma prepared to walk, and that's when it happened. The sound of heels striking the pavement echoed across the grass, sharp and commanding. A hush fell over the crowd as a figure marched toward us, clutching a folder of papers. Karen. She wore a bold blue dress that clashed with the setting. Her sunglasses perched high on her nose, her chin lifted like a queen walking into a court. The confidence in her stride told me she had planned this moment carefully. She wanted attention. She wanted control. Emma froze at the start of the aisle, confusion flashing in her eyes. My mother gasped. The music faltered. Guests looked at one another, unsure of what was happening. And then Karen's voice cut through the silence like a knife. "This wedding is not authorized. This entire event is in violation of community rules, and I am shutting it down." A wave of murmurs rippled through the crowd. People turned to me, searching for answers, while Karen stood there smirking as if she had just delivered a final verdict. She lifted the folder in her hands and flipped it open dramatically, pulling out a stack of handwritten regulations she had cobbled together. "According to Community Ordinance 14B, Section 3, she announced loudly, "the pavilion cannot be used for private ceremonies without approval from the board. And since no such approval was granted, I hereby order this wedding cancelled immediately." Emma's face fell. her smile fading into shock and anger. She looked at me, as though afraid everything we had worked for was about to crumble. I reached out and gave her a reassuring nod, though inside my blood boiled. This was the moment I had been waiting for. Karen thought she had us cornered, but she had no idea she had walked straight into her own trap. I stepped forward, clearing my throat, and the murmurs fell silent. "Karen," I said, my voice steady, "you don't have the authority to cancel anything here today." Her eyes narrowed. "I most certainly do. I represent the community." "No," I interrupted, pulling a crisp envelope from my jacket pocket. "You represent yourself, and unfortunately for you that's not enough." Slowly, deliberately, I unfolded the official event permit, the very same one I had stamped with my own county seal weeks ago. "This wedding is fully authorized by the county, approved under state law, and signed by the one person who actually has the authority to issue permits for this property." Her smirk faltered. "And who would that be?" I smiled. The crowd erupted with whispers, gasps, and laughter. My best man clapped his hands, grinning from ear to ear. Emma's eyes lit up with pride. Karen, for the first time I had ever seen, looked genuinely speechless. She opened her mouth, then closed it again, her cheeks reddening as she realized her dramatic performance had collapsed under the weight of reality. But Karen wasn't one to admit defeat easily. Her voice rose again, shrill and desperate. If it's a violation of noise ordinances, and there's limited parking, people are blocking driveways, this whole thing is illegal." I shook my head calmly. "Actually, parking was approved with overflow at the community lot. Noise levels are well within permitted limits until 10 p.m. Every single detail of this wedding has been reviewed and approved by me. As the county's event licensing officer." I glanced at the guests, who were now grinning, some even chuckling. "So unless you'd like me to cite you for trespassing on a private, legally authorized event, I suggest you take a seat or leave." The silence that followed was deafening. Karen's jaw tightened, her knuckles wide around the folder she clutched. She scanned the crowd, searching for support, but found none. Every guest, every friend, every family member had turned against her, their expressions ranging from annoyance to outright amusement. For once, Karen had no audience. She finally let out a frustrated huff and snapped her folder shut. "This isn't over," she muttered, spinning on her heel and marching away. Her heels clicked angrily against the pavement as the crowd burst into applause. Emma's smile returned brighter than ever. The music started again, and she began her walk down the aisle, her eyes never leaving mine. In that moment, everything else faded away. The chaos, the drama, the intrusion, it all dissolved into the background. All that mattered was her, walking toward me, ready to become my wife. And yet, deep in my chest, I knew Karen wasn't finished. People like her never walked away quietly. This was only the beginning. The applause from our guests still echoed in the air as Emma finally reached me, her smile radiant as she held my hand. The ceremony began again, but I could feel the tension hadn't completely lifted. Everyone tried to laugh off Karen's intrusion, whispering about how bold and ridiculous she had been. But I knew Karen, she wasn't the type to storm off and stay gone. Her pride was too heavy, her need for control too strong. Even as I looked into Emma's shining eyes and tried to lose myself in her vows, a small part of me braced for her return. The ceremony itself was beautiful, just as we had imagined. Our friend officiated with warmth, speaking about love, patience, and the strength of partnership. The breeze carried the scent of flowers across the lake, and the sound of birds blended with the music. By the time we exchanged rings and kissed, the guests were cheering so loudly it felt like the whole world celebrated with us. Emma and I walked back down the aisle, hand in hand, hearts pounding, as rice and flower petals showered over us. For a moment, it felt perfect, but when I caught sight of Karen standing at the far edge of the parking lot, arms crossed and phone pressed to her ear, my stomach tightened. She wasn't finished. She was plotting. The reception began almost immediately. Tables had been set under the pavilion, covered with white linens and decorated with simple but elegant centerpieces Emma had picked herself. Laughter bubbled up as guests filled their plates from the buffet, kids danced barefoot on the grass, and music floated through the air. Emma and I shared our first dance, swaying together as though no one else existed. My mother wiped her eyes again, and Jake filmed the whole thing while cracking jokes. It was joyful, lively, everything we had dreamed, until the flashing red and blue lights appeared at the entrance. The crowd's laughter died instantly as the police cars rolled into the lot, their sirens silent but their presence heavy. People exchanged uneasy glances, voices dropping to hushed tones. Emma's hand squeezed mine tightly, her face pale. My heart sank not from guilt or fear, but from sheer frustration. I already knew who was responsible. Sure enough, Karen appeared, from behind one of the cruiser's arms, waving dramatically as she pointed toward the pavilion. She looked triumphant, like a queen leading her soldiers into battle. The officers stepped out, looking around with cautious professionalism. "This is the illegal event I told you about," Karen announced, her voice loud enough for every guest to hear. "Noise violations, trespassing, and unapproved use of public property. Shut it down immediately." Gasps and murmurs swept through the guests again. Parents pulled their children closer, unsure of what was about to happen. Emma's father muttered a curse under his breath, glaring at Karen with disgust. My best man leaned toward me and whispered, "Well, here we go again." I straightened my shoulders, took Emma's hand, and walked toward the officers. It was time to end this nonsense once and for all. "Good afternoon, officers," I greeted, keeping my tone calm but firm. "My name is Daniel Hayes. I'm the county's event licensing officer, and this wedding is fully permitted." One of the officers, a tall man with a notepad in hand, gave me a measured look. "Sir, we received a complaint about an unauthorized event and possible ordinance violations. Do you have proof of authorization?" "Yes," I said immediately, pulling out the same envelope I had shown Karen earlier. I unfolded the papers and handed them over. "Here is the official event license, stamped and sealed by the county. You'll see my signature on it." The officer scanned the permit, his expression neutral. Then he glanced up at me. "You signed this yourself?" "That's correct," I replied evenly. "As the county licensing officer, I have the authority to approve events on this property. Every regulation has been followed: parking, noise, safety measures. Everything is legal." The second officer, a younger woman with sharp eyes, leaned closer to inspect the papers. She gave a small nod. "Looks legitimate." Karen rushed forward, practically shoving herself between us. No. He's lying. He can't approve his own wedding. That's a conflict of interest. He's abusing his power, and you need to stop this event right now." The officers exchanged a look, clearly unimpressed by her theatrics. The tall officer raised an eyebrow. "Ma'am, unless you have evidence of wrongdoing, everything here appears to be in order." Karen's face turned red. "Evidence? Look at the noise. Look at all these cars. You can't just let him do whatever he wants." The younger officer crossed her arms. "Ma'am, the sound levels are within the legal limit, and the parking is in designated areas. We see no violations here." Laughter rippled through the guests, soft at first, then louder as people realized Karen was being dismissed in front of everyone. Emma's cousin actually clapped, and my best man muttered, "She's really digging her own grave." But Karen wasn't finished. Her voice rose even higher, shrill with desperation. "If you won't shut this down, then I'll take it to the county board. I'll sue. I'll have him fired." That was the final straw. I stepped forward, my voice firm, but calm, making sure every guest could hear. "Karen, let me make something perfectly clear. This event is lawful. I am within my rights as both a licensing officer and as a citizen to hold this wedding here. You have interfered enough. If you continue disrupting, I will have no choice but to file a complaint against you for harassment and trespassing." The officers didn't say a word. They didn't need to. Their silence, combined with the approving nods from my guests, made it clear where they stood. Karen's eyes darted around, searching desperately for anyone to back her up. But the crowd was against her. No one supported her this time. With a furious huff, she spun on her heel, muttering to herself as she stomped back to the parking lot. The officers, satisfied that everything was resolved, handed my permit back and offered congratulations before heading to their cars. As the police vehicles pulled away, the crowd erupted into cheers and applause. Music began again, louder than before, almost as if in defiance. Emma threw her arms around me, tears of relief streaming down her cheeks. "You handled that perfectly," she whispered. I kissed her forehead. "She can't take this from us. Not today." The party roared back to life, more joyful than ever. People danced, laughed, and celebrated harder, as if Karen's attempt had only fueled their determination to enjoy the night. Plates were filled, glasses raised, and stories shared. My uncle even grabbed the microphone and toasted not only to our marriage but to shutting down busybodies who don't know when to quit, which sent the crowd into another round of laughter. Still, even as the celebration carried on, I couldn't shake the nagging thought at the back of my mind. Karen wasn't done. She had lost twice now in front of the entire community, and someone like her didn't take humiliation lightly. She would be back, one way or another. I could feel it like a storm on the horizon. As the sun dipped lower and the string lights over the pavilion began to glow, Emma and I sat side by side, watching our friends and family dance. She leaned her head against my shoulder and sighed contentedly. "This is everything I wanted," she murmured. I wrapped my arm around her, holding her close. "It's perfect, and no one, not even Karen, can take this day away from us." But as I looked out into the darkening night, I caught sight of a shadow lingering near the trees. A familiar figure stood watching, arms crossed, her face barely visible in the dim light. Karen hadn't gone home. She was still here, waiting it. I knew the night wasn't over yet. The music was back in full swing, and laughter carried over the lake as if the world itself was celebrating with us. Guests crowded the dance floor under the glowing string lights. The DJ kept the energy alive, and Emma twirled with her cousins, her dress flowing like something out of a dream. I stood near the buffet table for a moment, just soaking it all in. For all the chaos Karen had tried to stir earlier, the night was beautiful. People were happy. My bride was glowing, and yet, in the back of my mind, there was still that And figuratively, Karen hadn't left. I had seen her near the tree line as the sun went down, lurking like a storm cloud that refused to drift away. I half expected her to come storming back in any minute, but as the evening stretched on, nothing. That happened. For a brief stretch of time. I let myself believe maybe she'd finally given up. That hope didn't last long. It began with the lights. One by one, the string lights above us flickered and dimmed. Guests paused mid-dance, looking up with confused expressions. Then suddenly, the entire pavilion went dark. A chorus of surprised voices filled the air, and children squealed in alarm. The music cut out, leaving only the sound of uneasy murmurs. Emma hurried over to me, gripping my arm. "What happened? Did we blow a fuse?" I pulled a flashlight from my pocket. I always carried one at events, out of habit, and shined it toward the power box on the side of the pavilion. The switch had been thrown. Not by accident, deliberately. I didn't even need to guess who had done it. Before I could move, a voice pierced the darkness, smug and triumphant. "See, even the power knows this wedding isn't supposed to happen." Gasps rippled through the crowd as Karen stepped into the faint glow of the emergency lantern near the buffet table. Her arms were folded, her expression smug, as though she had orchestrated some kind of grand finale. A few guests groaned audibly, muttering her name like it was a curse. Emma's hand tightened on mine. "She cut the power," she whispered, her voice trembling with a mix of disbelief and fury. I strode toward the breaker box, keeping my voice calm but firm. "Karen, you just crossed the line. Cutting power to an event isn't just petty, it's a violation of safety regulations." "Safety," she shot back, her voice dripping with mockery. "I'm the only one keeping this community safe from people like you who think they can break rules whenever they want. This whole circus is a nuisance. Too loud, too many cars, and way too disruptive. I'm doing everyone a favor." The guests erupted into protest, voices rising as they defended us. "We're not bothered," someone shouted. "It's a wedding, not a crime scene," yelled another. Even Emma's grandmother shook her cane in Karen's direction, scolding her like a child. But Karen didn't flinch. She thrived on the attention, good or bad. I flicked the breaker back on, and the pavilion lights blinked to life again, drawing cheers from the guests. The music kicked back in, though quieter now, as though the DJ himself was nervous about provoking Karen further. I turned back to her, standing tall. "You're done. You've disrupted this wedding enough. If you so much as touch that power box again, I'll have the sheriff here within minutes. And unlike your complaints, that will stick." For a moment, her eyes narrowed, her lips curling into a sneer. But instead of backing down, she pulled something from her folder. Not papers, this time, but her phone. She raised it high, showing that she was live streaming to everyone watching. She announced dramatically, "This is a so-called county official abusing his position, breaking laws, and bullying a concerned resident. Look at how he treats me just for standing up for community rights." Phones buzzed in the crowd as people realized what she was doing. Some guests laughed, others groaned. But Emma's face burned with embarrassment. I could see how much it pained her to have our special day turned into a circus sideshow for Karen's petty theatrics. I took a deep breath and addressed not just Karen, but her phone camera too. "For anyone watching, this event is legally permitted and authorized. I am the county's licensing officer, and I approve this wedding according to all regulations. What you're seeing here is a woman trespassing, harassing, and attempting to sabotage a lawful gathering." The guests erupted in cheers again, many of them waving at the camera and shouting things like, "Go home, Karen, and get a life." A few even pulled out their own phones, recording her behavior as proof in case she tried to twist the narrative later. Karen's confident smile faltered for once. She wasn't the only one controlling the story. She tucked her phone away with a huff, her face red with fury. "This isn't over," she snapped, almost spitting the words. I leaned closer, lowering my voice so only she could hear. "You're right, it's not over. Because after tonight, I'll be filing a formal report about your harassment. And next time you try to pull something like this, you won't just be embarrassed, you'll be facing charges." Her eyes widened slightly, the first flicker of doubt breaking through her bravado. Without another word, she turned on her heel and stalked back toward the parking lot, her blue dress swaying furiously as she disappeared into the shadows. The crowd let out a collective sigh of relief. Some even clapped again, as though applauding her departure. Emma slipped her arms around me, burying her face against my chest. "I just wanted a normal wedding," she whispered, her voice cracking. I held her tightly, stroking her hair. "I know, love, and I promise you we're going to finish this night the way we planned. Karen won't ruin what we've built." Slowly, the tension melted. The music swelled again, louder this time, as if daring Karen to return. Guests poured back onto the dance floor, determined not to let her win. Laughter rose once more, glasses clinked, and even the children seemed to dance harder, as though defying the shadow she had cast. Emma and I finally had our first dance as husband and wife without interruption. The world seemed to pause as we swayed together, her head resting against my shoulder, her eyes closed in quiet bliss. For those few minutes, Karen didn't exist. There was only us, the music, and the love that had carried us to this moment. But as the night wore on and the stars came out above us, I couldn't shake the feeling that she was still out there plotting. Karen wasn't the type to surrender gracefully. She had already lost twice in one day, and for someone like her, that was unbearable. I kissed Emma's forehead, whispering, no matter what she tries next, we'll face it together. And though I smiled and danced and laughed with my guests, deep inside I knew the battle wasn't finished. Karen had one more move left in her, and when it came, it wouldn't be small. Because people like Karen never leave quietly. They wait, they plan, and when they strike again, they make sure it's loud enough for the whole world to hear. The stars hung over the lake like scattered diamonds, their reflection rippling in the dark water. The string lights glowed warmly above the pavilion. Laughter and music filled the air, and for a while it seemed as though the storm had finally passed. Guests danced with unrestrained joy. Plates of food were emptied, and the clinking of glasses echoed with every toast. Emma leaned against me, her cheeks still flushed from dancing, her eyes sparkling in the glow of the lights. For a moment, I dared to believe we had finally beaten Karen's madness, but belief is fragile, especially when it comes to someone like her. It began when I saw the headlights, not one pair but several, rolling into the gravel parking lot all at once. Conversations quieted as more cars arrived than we had expected. At first I thought it might just be late guests, but then the doors opened and I saw who stepped out. Board members, the neighborhood association's board, a half dozen of them, dressed in their suits and dresses, walking in a tight group toward the pavilion. And in the center, of course, was Karen, striding like she had just summoned an army. She waved her arms dramatically, pointing toward us as though presenting evidence in a trial. There, you see. This is what I've been telling you all about. Unauthorized use of the pavilion, noise blasting across the lake, chaos everywhere. Shut it down before it gets worse. The buzz of conversation spread through the guests like wildfire. People turned to watch the new arrivals, whispering with unease. Emma stiffened beside me, her hand tightening around mine. Her eyes searched mine, full of the same fear I felt in my gut. This wasn't just Karen anymore. She had brought reinforcements. The board president, a heavy-set man with gray hair and glasses, adjusted his jacket as he stepped forward. His expression was unreadable, but his presence alone carried weight. "What's going on here?" he asked, his voice firm but not yet hostile. Karen leaped into the gap before I could speak. "What's going on is a blatant violation of community rules. They've taken over the pavilion, disrupted everyone with their noise, and they're acting like the law doesn't apply to them. I called you because no one else will do anything." She glared at me with pure venom. "He thinks because he works for the county, he can just stamp his own papers and do whatever he wants. This is corruption at the highest level." Gasps rippled through the crowd again, but this time they weren't whispers of confusion, they were disbelief, even laughter. My uncle shook his head, muttering, "She's lost it." But the board members didn't laugh. They stood silently, watching me, waiting for a response. I stepped forward, my voice steady. "Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Daniel Hayes. I am the county licensing officer, and yes, I approved this event. Every regulation has been followed: parking, sound levels, safety requirements. Nothing here violates county or state law." I pulled the familiar envelope from my jacket pocket again, unfolding the official permit. "Here is the documentation, stamped and sealed, confirming the authorization." The board president accepted the papers, scanning them carefully. A few of the others leaned in to look. One woman adjusted her glasses, nodding slightly as she traced the seal with her finger. Karen hovered behind them like a vulture, her face red with anticipation, waiting for them to condemn me. Finally, the president looked up. His tone was neutral, but his words were measured. "This appears to be in order." Karen nearly exploded. "What? No, it's not. In order, it's fraud. He signed his own permit. He's abusing his power." The woman with glasses shook her head. "It's not fraud, Karen. It's his job. Licensing officers are allowed to issue permits for themselves as long as the regulations are met. And from what I can see, they have been." The guests erupted into applause, laughter, and cheers. Some even shouted, "Go home, Karen," and "Give it up already." The sound washed over the pavilion, a wave of joy crashing against the bitterness she had dragged in with her. But Karen refused to surrender. Her voice rose to a screech. "You're all blind. He's lying. He's manipulating you. If you don't stop this, then I'll." The board president raised his hand, cutting her off. His face hardened, and when he spoke his tone carried authority. "That's enough, Karen. We came here to investigate a claim and we've found no violation. This event is permitted. There's nothing more to discuss." Karen's mouth opened and closed, but no words came. For the first time, she looked small, cornered, and powerless. She turned in circles, searching for anyone to support her, but the board members stood firm. Even they were tired of her antics. Emma stepped forward then, her voice calm but clear. "Karen, this is our wedding, the most important day of our lives. You've tried again and again to ruin it, but all you've done is show everyone who you really are. Please go home. Leave us in peace." The crowd murmured in agreement, their support rising like a tide. Karen's face twisted with fury, her hands shaking. "This isn't over," she hissed. "You'll regret this." And with that, she spun on her heel, storming back to the parking lot. The board members watched her go, shaking their heads in collective frustration. The president turned back to me, handing back the papers. "Mr. Hayes, I apologize for the disruption. It seems Karen's concerns were unfounded. Please enjoy the rest of your evening." I accepted the papers with a nod. "Thank you for coming. I know it's unusual, but I appreciate you taking the time to see for yourselves." They gave polite nods before departing, leaving the pavilion bathed once again in light and laughter. Tension melted into relief, and the celebration surged back with renewed energy. Guests cheered, the DJ cranked up the music, and Emma pulled me onto the dance floor with a laugh. For the first time that night, it felt like we had truly won, not just because we had defended our right to marry, but because Karen had been publicly, undeniably defeated. We danced until our legs ached, we laughed until our cheeks hurt, and we celebrated with everyone we loved. Emma's eyes glowed with happiness, her smile unshakable. For a while it felt like Karen had finally been silenced, but as I looked out across the dark parking lot, a chill ran down my spine. I knew her too well. People like Karen didn't accept defeat. They didn't walk away quietly, no matter how many times she had been humiliated. Tonight, something told me she wasn't finished. I kissed Emma's forehead, whispering softly so only she could hear, "No matter what happens next, we'll face it together." And though the music drowned out my unease, deep inside I felt it. Karen was planning something bigger, something that would push the night to its breaking point. The morning of our wedding dawned brighter than I could have imagined. The sun climbed over the horizon in streaks of orange and gold, lighting up the lakeside pavilion where everything was set for the big day. White chairs lined up neatly in rows, tied with satin bows that fluttered in the soft summer breeze. Flowers, roses, hydrangeas, and lilac filled the air with fragrance. Musicians tuned their instruments, and the gentle sound of a harp drifted across the water like the opening notes of a dream. It was everything Emma and I had planned for so long, every small detail falling perfectly into place. But beneath the calm surface of that morning, I couldn't shake the uneasiness that lingered in the back of my mind. Karen, even though the county officers had warned her twice during the week to stay out of official events, I knew her well enough to expect she'd make one last attempt to steal our happiness. She thrived on control, on making others bend to her self-proclaimed rules, and the idea that she could stop my wedding was far too tempting for her to resist. I kept telling myself to stay calm, that no matter what she tried, she couldn't beat the law, the fact that I was the one who wrote the very permit that protected this event. By noon, guests began to arrive, filling the seats with laughter and warm conversations. My parents hugged me tightly, their eyes brimming with pride. Emma's family beamed as they walked in, some of them openly emotional as they saw the pavilion for the first time. My best man Jason clapped me on the back with a grin and whispered, "This is it, buddy. She's the one." I smiled, nerves buzzing in my chest, not from doubt but from the weight of the moment. I was about to marry the woman I loved, and nothing, absolutely nothing, was going to take that from me. The ceremony was set to start at 3, but as the clock ticked closer, whispers began rippling through the crowd. From the far end of the pavilion walkway, a familiar figure appeared. Karen, dressed in her usual oversized sunglasses, a wide-brimmed hat, and a strikingly loud blue dress that looked almost theatrical. She marched toward the gathering with the kind of confidence only someone blinded by their own ego could carry. Gasps echoed across the crowd. Some guests rolled their eyes. Others looked genuinely nervous. A few even muttered, "Not today." Under their breath, Emma, waiting with her bridesmaids at the side of the pavilion, caught sight of her and stiffened. I could see the worry cross her face, that fear Karen might ruin everything. But I gave her a reassuring nod, silently promising that this time Karen would not win. Karen reached the center aisle like a storm rolling in, her heels clicking against the stone pathway. She raised her voice, commanding everyone's attention. "This wedding," she declared, "is not authorized and must be shut down immediately." Her voice carried over the music, which faltered into silence. Guests shifted uncomfortably, torn between shock and frustration. She waved a thick stack of papers in her hand as if they were holy scripture. According to neighborhood ordinances, noise levels, parking violations, and unauthorized use of the pavilion make this entire event invalid. Her words struck like lightning, but instead of fear, I felt a calm determination settle over me. I walked down the aisle, every step deliberate, and faced her in front of everyone. She smiled smugly, clearly expecting me to crumble under her accusations. But the moment I reached her, I pulled a crisp folder from my suit jacket. Inside was the official wedding permit, complete with every signature, approval, and legal stamp required by county law. "Karen," I said, my voice firm but steady, "this wedding is not only authorized, it's protected by the highest level of county approval, and the person who issued the permit," I held up the document so everyone could see the seal, "is me." The crowd erupted into applause, some even whistling and cheering. Emma's face lit up in relief, tears glistening in her eyes. Karen's smug smile faltered, her cheeks flushing as she realized her dramatic attempt had backfired. Still, she wasn't ready to surrender. She thrust her papers at me, her voice rising to a shrill pitch. These are the regulations. These are the real rules. You're violating. I cut her off, loud enough for everyone to hear. Those are nothing more than scribbles you wrote yourself. Karen, they aren't law. They aren't official, and they carry no authority. I enforce the law in this county. And today, the law says this wedding goes forward. The officers I had quietly invited as guests stepped closer, their presence adding weight to my words. One of them spoke clearly. Karen, you've been warned before about interfering with official events. If you don't leave now, you'll be charged with trespassing and obstruction. The silence that followed was deafening. For the first time in all my encounters with her, Karen looked unsure. Her face twisted between anger and humiliation, but she couldn't find the words to fight back. Murmurs spread through the guests, a mixture of satisfaction and relief. Someone in the back even shouted, "Sit down, Karen." Laughter rippled through the crowd, finally with her pride in shreds. Karen turned sharply on her heel and stormed out of the pavilion. Her heels clattered against the stone as she vanished down the path, her blue dress swaying like a flag of defeat. The moment she disappeared from sight, the music began again, brighter and stronger than before. Emma walked down the aisle toward me, radiant in her gown, her smile unstoppable. As she reached me, I felt the weight of the moment. Everything we had fought for, everything we had endured culminating right here. We exchanged vows, promising love, loyalty, and strength in the face of all challenges, even ones named Karen. When I kissed her, cheers rose like thunder, echoing over the lake. The reception that followed was pure joy. Guests laughed, danced, and celebrated without fear of interruption. Speeches were made, toasts raised, and every glance at Emma reminded me just how lucky I was. At one point my father pulled me aside, pride shining in his eyes. "You handled that with dignity," he said. "You didn't just marry Emma today, you proved to everyone that truth always wins." As the night drew to a close, Emma and I stood together by the lake, the moonlight shimmering across the water. We held hands, silent for a moment, just soaking in the peace. Finally, she whispered, "We did it." She tried, but we won. I squeezed her hand and smiled. "No, love, we didn't just win. We showed everyone that no one, not even stop what's meant to be." And with that, our wedding day ended, not in chaos or defeat, but in triumph and unity. Karen may have tried to steal our happiness, but all she managed to do was make our story unforgettable. Our love, our commitment, and our strength had overcome everything. The last song played, the final guests departed, and as Emma and I walked away hand in hand, I knew this was only the beginning of a life built not on fear or control, but on love and resilience. And deep down, I couldn't help but smile at the thought. Karen might still try again someday, but she would never succeed. Not while we stood together. For more powerful real-life inspired stories like this, watch and support my YouTube channel Bright Reality. Don't forget to like, share, comment, and subscribe to Bright Reality for more.